story of Medusa's Serpent-People clan begins long before the Tagor Desert, long before their rise as a fierce tribal force feared by the Gamma Empire. Their origins can be traced back to the ancient era, when magical beast bloodlines still dominated the Duchy continent, when the sky shook beneath the wings of the ancient void dragons, and the ground trembled at the roar of the heavenly Phoenix clan. In that age, there existed a bloodline capable of rivaling both: the lineage of the Ancient Celestial Serpent, the source and ancestor of all serpent-type magical beasts. From this bloodline branched the once mighty Nine Netherworld Python Clan, a race so strong that it stood as one of the three supreme magical beast clans in ancient times. At the height of their power, the Nine Netherworld Pythons possessed terrifying potential. Their bloodline carried not only the might of the Ancient Celestial Serpent, but also the possibility of evolving into the legendary seven-colored sky-swallowing python. Medusa's true form is precisely this evolution, proving beyond doubt the ancient blood connection her clan once shared with the Nine Netherworld Python Clan. But this glorious lineage was also bound to a tragic fate, for the same war that allowed the Serpentine race to rise also became the catalyst behind their eventual fragmentation and exile. The Ancient Celestial Serpents were unmatched in combat power, yet they suffered from a fatal weakness. Their reproduction rate was astonishingly low. A single Ancient Celestial Serpent might live for countless years, but producing the next generation was almost impossible. In contrast, their greatest rivals, the Ancient Void Dragons, possessed both terrifying power and remarkable reproductive ability. They multiplied generation after generation, building a thriving clan that never lacked successors. When these two ancient forces clashed, it was only a matter of time before sheer numbers began to tip the balance of war. In the early stages of the conflict, the Ancient Celestial Serpents and the nine-colored devouring pythons joined forces, combining their destructive power to suppress the ancient void dragons. For a time, they even pushed the dragons to the brink of collapse. Records of this era speak of shattered mountain ranges and dried rivers left behind by their battles, a war that spanned thousands of years. But the ancient void dragons had the foundation in numbers to recover. Once they reorganized, their counterattack became an unstoppable storm. Driven by the instinct to protect their bloodline, the dragons launched a massive hunt targeting the Ancient Celestial Serpents and all related branches under their lineage. This war was nothing short of catastrophic. One by one, the pure-blood Ancient Celestial Serpents fell, their numbers dwindling year after year till their once mighty presence faded into myth. The Nine Netherworld Pythons fought fiercely, but even they could not escape the onslaught unscathed. Although they retained a portion of their bloodline and managed to survive, the cost was immense. Their core clans suffered devastating losses. Territories were abandoned, ancestral grounds were destroyed, and countless serpent offshoot tribes disappeared from history. In this ancient chaos, Medusa's ancestors, the early Serpent-People, were still a specialized branch serving the Nine Netherworld clan. Unlike the main bloodline, they were responsible for reconnaissance, tracking, and supporting the flanks during battle. While not the most powerful branch, their role was vital in navigating terrain and gathering intelligence. However, during the Great Upheaval, this very role became the reason they were separated. When the ancient void dragons' hunt spread across the central beast domain, the Serpent-People lost contact with the main clan. They were cut off, left stranded without reinforcements, and forced into a desperate escape. Under constant pursuit, they fled farther and farther from the central plains. They crossed barren mountains, ravaged battlefields, and lifeless zones created by the War of Ancient Bloodlines. With every generation, the memories of their homeland grew fainter, replaced by the instinctive drive to survive. Eventually, they crossed into the distant northwest continent, an undeveloped region overlooked by the great clans. It was in this harsh and remote land that the Serpent-People finally stopped running. What began as a temporary refuge slowly transformed into their new home. While the Serpent-People struggled to survive outside, the Nine Netherworld Python Clan's situation within the central beast domain was no better. Though they survived the war, the clan faced internal conflict and growing instability. With the Ancient Celestial Serpent bloodline nearly extinct, the clan desperately sought to maintain their population. To avoid the fate of total extinction, They began reproducing extensively, allowing large numbers of mixed-blood descendants to be born. This preserved the clan's numbers but further diluted the purity of the ancient bloodline. Bloodline purity was everything in the world of magical beasts. As the core of one's strength, identity, and status, purity determined the entire clan hierarchy. For the Nine Netherworld Pythons, the gradual dilution of their bloodline not only weakened their combat strength, but also eroded the spiritual connection they once shared with their ancient ancestors. The Serpent-People, already long separated and subtly different due to generations of evolution away from the main branch, were naturally viewed as outsiders. By the time they had a chance to reconnect, they no longer possessed the traits valued by the main clan. Generations passed. The memories of the original homeland, the ancient war against the dragons, and the existence of the Nine Netherworld clan slowly disappeared. The Serpent-People fought for every inch of land they occupied. With no large magical beast clans to rely on, they developed their own culture, their own hierarchy, and their own survival rules. The early Serpent-People lived harsh lives. Surrounded by deserts, hostile beasts, and expanding human kingdoms, their days were spent defending territory, hunting for resources, and managing internal survival struggles. In this environment, ancient history mattered far less than survival. Only scattered oral traditions preserved fragments of the truth. A few elders remembered vague stories of a great mother clan, of a homeland far beyond the desert, of a bloodline said to originate from the Ancient Celestial Serpents, but none could fully explain the past. Even Medusa herself, despite carrying the rare seven-colored sky-swallowing python bloodline, possessed no complete understanding of her clan's origins. As centuries passed, the Serpent-People solidified their presence in the Tagor Desert, a tribal system formed around the queen, whose absolute authority held the tribe together. Their strength grew, and their unique evolution as half-human, half-serpent beings gave them versatility unmatched by most magical beast clans. Under powerful queens, the Serpent-People became a dominant force, able to contend with the Duhuang experts of the Gamma Empire despite being isolated from the Central Plains. By the time Medusa ascended to the throne, the Serpent-People were no longer a branch of the Nine Netherworld Pythons. They had transformed into a completely independent race with their own beliefs, their own identity, and their own destiny. Although their bloodline retained faint echoes of the Ancient Celestial Serpent, their migration had severed almost all tangible ties to the main clan. What remained was only a distant connection buried within their blood. Thus, Medusa's people did not merely migrate. They were pushed, hunted, scattered, diluted, and ultimately reshaped by history. The war that shattered the ancient serpent bloodlines forced them into exile. Their long struggle for survival remade them into a new race, and their isolation in the desert turned them into the formidable serpent people known throughout the Gamma Empire. Their past became legend, their homeland became myth, and only through Medusa's rise did the faint traces of their ancient heritage awaken once more, revealing a forgotten story that stretched back to the age of ancient beasts and vanished bloodlines. And so the truth behind the Serpent People's migration is far more than a simple tale of wandering. It is a story carved into the bloodline itself, shaped by ancient wars, forgotten clans, and the unyielding instinct to survive. From the glory of the Ancient Celestial Serpent to the desolate sands of the Tagor Desert, every step of their journey was forged through struggle, sacrifice, and resilience. By the time Medusa rose as queen, the Serpent People were no longer an exiled branch. They had become a race reborn, carrying the last flicker of their ancestral heritage into a new era. Their past may be buried beneath the sands of time, but their legacy continues to live on through the power, pride, and unbreakable will of the Serpent Queen, who inherited the echoes of a once supreme bloodline.